Yep, the live stream started, David.
Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's Growth, Environment and Resources Scrutiny Committee. I'd like to start by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching this live stream of the meeting through the Council's YouTube page. Due to government guidance on social distancing, this meeting is taking place remotely in accordance with current legislation, which makes provision for remote attendance at and remote access to council meetings. The meeting is also following Peterborough City Council's virtual meeting protocol. In order for the meeting to run smoothly, I ask several things from members and participants. Firstly, that you keep your video camera switched on with your microphone muted, except when I invite you to speak. If you wish to speak, then please raise your virtual hand, which is a blue hand, and is located at the bottom of the participants section. I and the Democratic Services team will keep an eye on the participants list to see who wishes to speak. Please be patient if you are not invited to speak as soon as you have raised your hand, as there may be other people wishing to speak before you. The Democratic Services team will be monitoring the participants list to see if anyone has dropped out of the meeting, and will try and contact you to provide assistance to rejoin the meeting if this should happen. As with all new systems, we may run into technical problems, and for this I ask for your patience. Should this occur, an adjournment of the meeting will be declared while the fault is addressed, and the public broadcast will be paused. If this is not possible, the meeting will be adjourned until such time as it can be reconvened. Finally, I remind members that all virtual meetings are recorded. Before we move to the first item on the agenda, I will begin by taking a roll call of all Scrutiny Committee members to establish your presence. When your name is called out, please unmute your microphone and confirm you're in attendance. Thank you. Councillor Aitken.
Present.
Councillor Brown.
Present.
Councillor Burbidge.
Present.
Councillor Casey.
Present.
Councillor Ellis.
Present.
Councillor Judy Fox.
Present.
Councillor Howard.
Present.
Councillor Skipstead.
Present.
Councillor Wiggin.
Present.
Councillor Yazin.
Present.
And obviously in attendance is myself, Councillor Chris Harper as Chair. Also in attendance is Councillor John Fox, the Group Leader of Warrington First, and Councillor Sandford, the Group Leader of the Liberal Democrats. We also have Steve Cox, Executive Director, Place and Economy, who will also support us as a committee as the lead officer this evening. We also have Fiona McMillan, Director of Law and Governance, and David Beauchamp as the Supporting Democratic Services Officer. Plus we have other Democratic Services teams who are sitting in the background, basically making sure it works really well. So they'll come in if there's any technical difficulties. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll move now to agenda item number 1. David, for apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. No apologies for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. Item 2 is declaration of interest and whipping declarations. Do any members of the committee have any declarations of interest or whipping declarations? No, thank you very much. Item 3 then. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve, and I will take each set of minutes in turn. Set 1 will be the minutes of the joint scrutiny of the budget meeting held on the 24th of February 2020, pages 3 to 22 of your agenda. We have been asked to approve the minutes as set out in the agenda as a correct record. Can I ask if any member who does not agree with these minutes as a true record, please raise your hand now. Councillor Aitken. Have we lost her? Can't hear you, Councillor. That's it.
Sorry, I'm muted. So I've seen on the minutes that it states about the chairs at the joint scrutiny, and obviously yourself was selected. What I noticed was that myself as chair of House Scrutiny wasn't indicated on those minutes. So I think they need to be added.
Okay. David, are you okay with that?
Yes, that should be fine, Chairman, if members are happy to approve the minutes subject to the inclusion of Councillor Aitken's role as Chair of Health Scrutiny.
Okay, are there anybody else want change anything? So with that change, we're all happy, yes? Any objections? No, right. Okay, we'll move on to the second item, which is the minutes of the Growth, Environment and Resources Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 11th of March 2020, pages 23 to 32 of your agenda. We have been asked again to approve the minutes as set out on the agenda as a correct record. Can I ask if any member does not agree with the minutes, that they are a true record, please raise your hand. Councillor Ellis.
Sorry, Chair. I just want to raise a matter arising from the 24th of February, if possible. So I'm happy with the length of March minutes. I just want to raise just a matter arising from the 24th of February, if that's possible. If not, then.
Well, no, that's just if the minutes are correct.
Okay. I'll come back then. If I can come back for the 24th of February after the 11th of March. Yeah. Okay.
But they're correct in your view, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. Thank you very much. Okay, I see no objections then, so we'll take it that these minutes are agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 4 relates to exclusion of press and public. It is for the committee to determine whether the press and public should be excluded from the meeting on item 13, Opportunity Peterborough, on the grounds that the item contains exempt information under paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, because it contains information relating to the financial affairs of Opportunity Peterborough Limited. The public interest test has been applied to the information contained within this exempt annex, and it is considered that the need to retain this information as exempt outweighs the public interest in disclosing it. Please note that if we agree, we would only need to go into exempt session when discussing information in the exempt annex. If any member of the committee has any objection to going into exempt session for the item of Appendix B, which is exempt if it is to be discussed, please raise your hand now. Councillor Ellis?
Sorry, Chair. I did indicate about the item 3, the joint scrutiny of budget on the 24th of February. That I just want to raise some matters arising from those minutes.
Right.
Can I do that now?
Just hold on a second then. Can I just finish 4 and then I'll come back to you?
Okay.
Anybody else on item 4? No. Okay. We'll come back. We'll come. Sorry, who was spoke then?
If I may just jump in there, we wouldn't normally consider matters arising as part of the minutes. It's purely to determine accuracy. However, if Councillor Ellis did want to raise a point regarding how the business of the committee has been carried forward, that would be a good for discussion under the work programme terms of reference recommendations monitoring item.
Right. Okay. So just to be clear on that, Councillor Ellis, if the minutes are correct, that's all that is. Is there something different?
The minutes
are not correct.
So the minutes are correct. It's just that there's no response regarding the 3 recommendations made at that meeting.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if we can have an update about those responses. If that has to happen in a briefing, but there was a vote taken on 3 recommendations. One around car parking charges, one about CO2 friendly buildings, and another one around the refuse collection fleet, which I think we actually talk about in the meeting itself, so that one's not covered. Okay. But if we have a briefing, an update on what there's no cabinet responses on that agenda, on those items. So if we can have a briefing to give the responses. I know it's a long time ago because of COVID, and this is our first scrutiny committee, and it's really welcome that we're back as a growth scrutiny looking at things.
Okay. Thank you. David, are you okay with that, David, to get those?
Is that okay?
Answers for that?
Chairman, if I could just ask Councillor Ellis to return to those points under item 10, and then we will go through the recommendations monitoring report and identify any specific areas that need chasing up.
Item 10? Okay.
Under item 10, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you, sorry about that.
Okay, item 4 then, so there's no objections, so we're moving on from that one then. So item 5 now is the calling of any cabinet member or key officer decision. David?
No requests for calling, Chair.
Okay, we'll now move on to item 6, is the appointment of co-opting member, pages 33 to 36 of the agenda. I'll hand over this to David to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a standing item on the agenda that we have at the start of the municipal year for every scrutiny committee. Every scrutiny committee may co-opt up to 4 independent, non-voting co-opted members, one of which must be a parish councillor. So the Think Communities team, in consultation with Councillor Walsh, have gone out to all the parish councils and sought nominations. And the result is that Parish Councillor Keith Leavesley has been proposed to be made an independent co-opted member for another year. And he is, has of course served on the committee in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions at all for David on that report? No, okay. Then I seek approval of the appointment of Parish Councillor Keith Leavesley as the Parish Councillor co-opted member, asking if anyone objects, please, by raising your blue hand. No blue hands, therefore. Oh, hang on. Councillor Skipstead.
Sorry, no, that was, I thought I had to put it up. I only put it up when I'm objecting. Sorry.
No, you're
Mistake.
fine. Okay, that's good. Thank you very much. Therefore, Keith Leavesley is to join the meeting. Welcome, Keith, back onto the committee.
Thank you, Chair.
Good, back on. Well done. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item 7 then, which is pages 37 to 46 in your agenda. This is the place and economy COVID-19 update. I would like to welcome the following officers who are in attendance to assist with the presentation of this report. I have Steve Cox, Executive Director, Place and Economy, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, Charlotte Palmer, Group Manager, Transport and Environment, James Conagridge, Head of Environmental Partnerships, and Nicholas Harding, Head of Planning, Peterborough and Fenland. Okay, guys, over to you. Who's going to start that one off? Steve?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. Just a few words of introduction from me, and then happy to take any questions on the report. The committee requested an item just to take stock on the response, not of the whole Place and Economy Directorate, but those areas within the remit of the committee to COVID over the last 6 months or so. You'll see, and I think you know from your experience, how much work has been done by all teams across the council over the last 6 months, and that work continues as we're into the recovery phase, but also still dealing with some of the response phase, and of course looking ahead in planning for the months to come. Over the period, a number of staff across Place and Economy were redeployed, rightly to support the work of the teams managing shielded residents, also manning looking after the test centres as well. And today's discussion, I think, is really timely as we do look ahead into the next few months to take stock of where we've come from, what we've learned, but also to plan ahead. Within the report, we've got 4 areas that are covered: that around active travel, development management, city centre recovery, and waste recycling and the services of Aragon. And I'm sure there's plenty, hopefully of good information in there to summarise where the work that we've been doing over the period. So I'll stop there, Chair, and as you said, there are colleagues here to help answer any questions that members have got.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. Okay, committee members, do you have any questions for officers? Can I remind you to use your raise the blue hand when you're ready? Councillor Judy Fox, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's regarding the waste section. The bulky waste started on 21st of September last week, and reading, after 4 days, it has had to be stopped, and no further quotes or requests until they deal with the backlog. Obviously, that was very quick. Only 4 days. Do you know when this is likely to start again, please? And I've just got one more with the same sort of area, referring to the special CCTV cameras that have been purchased in connection to the fly tipping group that was formed. Can you please explain a little more regarding having limited opportunity to use these, please, especially as there's been a lot further fly tipping since the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair. So on the bulky waste hasn't been fully suspended. So the slots that are available each day, the 30 slots that we have in place, they're still operating as normal. The area that we've had to suspend at the moment due to the backlog is the quoted one. So these aren't your general list A items that are on the bulky waste at the moment. This is where we have to attend site, look at the various items. So this is more like a large accumulation of items that aren't your standard household items. So the normal bulky service is still operating. It is purely those separate quoted items that are being delayed. So we'll get back on the quoted items again as soon as we can. On the CCTV cameras, I know the enforcement team are looking to get them out as soon as they can. What they're looking at is the legislation to make sure the areas in question meet legislation to allow us to put cameras in place. So you're probably aware of the RIPA regulations around using covert CCTV. So I know Claire George and her team are working very hard on that and building up case by case different sites where we can start to use these cameras in place.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Can I come back?
Yes, certainly.
Can I come back? Thanks, James. That's brilliant. I thought there was something about the bulky waste. I didn't obviously either didn't read it or it didn't come across right. Not your fault, but it was who actually put it forward. That's great to hear. Also the CCTV, that's good to hear as well. And I did read that the PES, obviously Claire and Robin there, they've got 58 through the cases through the fly tipping, which is brilliant, and I'm so pleased about that. Thanks for your help anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks. A couple of questions already been asked by Judy. Thank you, Councillor Fox. And especially around the CCTV cameras, as I'm sure a lot of councillors have issues around hotspots or fly tipping. So if we can be kept updated on that. My other questions are around the question also things like we have issues around misused bins where people are putting all sorts of old rubbish on it and dumping them in places, and what actions can be taken around that. Also, which links into the recycling education and awareness. Okay, can we have an update on what is being done or planned to be done to raise awareness on what can and what cannot be dumped in certain bins? Also, the active travel tranche 2, which I'm very aware of because I'm on the cross-party working group. We looked at we had a meeting fairly recently where we looked at tranche 2, the 675. £100,000 possible bids. There was 3 areas which the council have been looking at: Aldo Road from Pleasure Fair Meadows Car Park, Park Road from Huntley Road, and Broadway from Junction of Eastfield. We did ask also from our working group around Crescent Bridge whether that can be looked at as a permanent bus lane. Can you update on that also, please? And that is it. Thank you very much. If you can just answer those questions. Oh, and sorry, redeployed staff you mentioned. Are those staff still redeployed, or have they come back to our services, or have temporary staff, or have you got other staff in to cover the work? Because that could be an effect of some of the issues we're coming at, especially around things like we have sometimes bin collections not being finished, different types of bins. So, and I presume that could be around staffing issues or around the fleet, which I think we talk about a bit later on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you a lot there. Sorry.
Right, who's going to take the first one?
Yeah, shall I come in on the very last question, and then perhaps James will come back on the earlier questions. The staff are now back from being redeployed, Councillor Ellis. But so what we're doing now is preparing through training for staff to be redeployed again potentially over the coming weeks and months, as I'm sure you would expect us to be planning for that. And what's really important is if that is the case and that is necessary, that we do make sure members are aware of anywhere where services might be affected. What we've done also in there is identify what we're regarding as key frontline services. So waste collection, for example, would be one of those key frontline services that we would find volunteers to support if there is an issue around continuity of service. Highways maintenance and emergency repairs to the road network would be another. So we are managing it very actively, but making sure that if we need to, again, we do provide support for the council as a whole in dealing with any repeat of the COVID crisis.
Thank you. James, you want to come in on the others?
Yeah, thank you. So on misuse of bins, so at the moment, Aragon will sticker a bin. So say, for instance, they come to collect a recycling bin and there's black bag waste in there, they will actually sticker that bin and then write on the sticker why that bin has been rejected. So that is our first port of call, to try and educate through the stickers, telling people what they're doing wrong to get them to use their bins correctly. But coming on to education, we've now got an officer who regularly does site visits. So if we have a known house or a known block of flats where we're getting regular contamination, he will actually go and do some door knocking and speak to the residents about what they should and shouldn't put in their bins. So we're going to continue to do that moving forwards. And we're also looking to do some further communication around food waste, because even though during lockdown we've seen increase in tonnages, especially in the black bin, we haven't seen the food waste tonnages increasing. So we're keen to really push that to get people using the food waste correctly and see the benefits from using it, from getting it out of their black bins. Just on the resourcing, Aragon obviously following the test and trace that has to be done. So unfortunately at the moment, the way things work, if they do have a suspected case or somebody within one of the family of the crew has a suspected case, we have to isolate them until they can get a test. So that can sometimes have a detrimental effect on us getting our rounds completed on time. But I can update to say Aragon are actively working with agencies to get more people inducted. I know they did an induction last Thursday and they inducted more drivers and loaders. So they're really trying hard to bring in that continuity so we don't have so many issues.
Okay. And just on the final point about the active travel Crescent Bridge, I don't know if there's somebody can answer that, if there's any update on that.
Should I give an update on that? It's Charlotte here.
Charlotte, yeah, please.
Yeah, okay, so just in relation to the Crescent Bridge scheme in particular, as members will be aware, all of the schemes that were introduced as part of the Tranche 1 active travel measures are temporary in nature. We are in the process of evaluating all of the different schemes to see what elements could be developed further, linking into our Tranche 2 work and wider transport schemes in the city. In terms of Crescent Bridge specifically, we're still not seeing traffic levels quite at pre-COVID levels yet. So at the moment, the city is experiencing approximately 88% pre-COVID traffic levels. But what's interesting with that is that the peak periods aren't as intense as they have been prior to COVID. So the AM peak is only at 57% of pre-COVID levels, with the PM peak at about 69%. And we know that through some monitoring devices we have in a couple of locations across the city. So obviously that's not specific to all areas of the city, but an average. So what we're in the process of doing is monitoring that scheme, monitoring the volume of cyclists that are using that. And as part of the cross-party working group looking at the active travel schemes, that will be reviewed as part of all of them. And obviously that group are able to make recommendations for how things should progress from there.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Howard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Yeah, my question was on the city centre recovery plan, and I think the plan itself is fantastic. I think as well as a shopping hub, we definitely need to look at a more social hub. My question is, if the funding is approved, is there a deadline for using the funding, in the sense that if we set up this fantastic infrastructure, could it be impacted by longer term measures of social distancing? Is there a deadline on the money, or can we put the brakes on if needed to work around the COVID circumstances? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. I think Steve, that would be it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. I think it's a really good question in terms of the timeline for spend, and given the uncertainties as we move forward, I think we'd want as much flexibility as we could possibly get to be able to respond to the changing conditions and economy within the city centre. So I think the spend is this financial year, but what I will do is check and come back and see whether there is flexibility should we need it to adapt that.
That's a good question. Thank you. Okay, John, you want to come back, or are you done?
Sorry, no, thank you. That's brilliant. Thanks very much.
Councillor Skipstead, please.
Yeah, this is probably one for James. The parish council that's the normally have bulky waste collections. They've been cancelled in the last few times. I'm just wondering when that, several of us were asking when that was going to be restarted. A lot of people cannot afford to pay to have their bulky waste removed and rely on those quite heavily. So thinking that should that not be a priority to get that restarted? I know there's some issues around making it secure, but that was one of my questions. The second one is more of a suggestion, but I want to know what you think. I've just been abroad in Denmark, where waste is nothing like what we experience in this country. And when I've done litter picks over here, we have an enormous amount of tin cans everywhere. And over there, they get money back on tin cans. And I'm just wondering if that's something that it seems to me make an enormous difference. If people can get money back, they wouldn't drop them everywhere. When we've done litter picks in my ward, we've had pretty well the whole of the litter pick is tin cans. And I was wondering if there's anything that can be done on that.
So just on the bulky waste, with the parish ones at the moment, we're not able to bring them back due to present they're having to do some work on weekends at the moment to catch up on weekday collections. And also we have to be careful for the drivers because they're all operating on tacos, so they've got driver's hour implications. So if they're doing regular work at weekends, we have to make sure that they're not overdoing the driver's hours for the following week to carry out the refuse rounds. So I will pick that up with Aragon to see what sort of timescale they think it is before they can bring those back, because I know they always say how good and well attended they are as well. So we're keen to get them back as soon as it's safe to do so. On the tin cans, that was a government initiative they were looking at about the return scheme. And I know some countries have started to implement this return scheme. So we are waiting to see what the government says about the return scheme initiative to see if that's brought forward in the UK. And if it is, obviously, we'll keep you all updated on that.
Thank you, that's interesting. It does make an amazing difference, I can tell you that.
Councillor Sandford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got two questions, if that's okay. The first question is on waste treatment, on the paragraph on page 42. It says in the report that the percentage recycling and composting has gone down from 41.73 to 40.04%, and this is blamed on increased waste tonnages due to COVID. But I'm not currently on this committee, as you know, but I have been on a number of previous occasions, and we've had report after report on recycling percentages. If I could just remind the committee that in 2008 we had a recycling rate of around about 48%, and the council set a target in its waste strategy to get recycling up to 65% by 2020. We're now in 2020 and the recycling rate has actually dropped quite significantly. Now, I'd just like to ask what action are officers proposing on this? We were told about 12 months ago that it was Amy who were at fault because they weren't operating the contract properly. Now we have Aragon and the situation's deteriorated further. My suggestion is two things have happened. One, the council now has an incineration plant which has got to have guaranteed tonnages going through, and the other thing that's happened is the council's introduced the brown bin charge, which has led to a dramatic reduction in the number of people having brown bins. So the question is really what action is proposed to improve these really awful recycling percentages.
Thank you. James, is that you?
Yeah. So we have obviously seen an increase in black bin tonnage during lockdown, and like I said, obviously we haven't seen an increase in things like food waste tonnage, which we really should have been seeing an increase in. So we know there is a big piece of work there on changing behaviours and getting people to use the waste streams correctly. So I think working with Aragon, they've now got this officer who can go out there and do more door knocking, speaking to people. As lockdown eases, we can get the road shows back out to educate again and really say to people how they should be using the various waste streams. On the garden waste, obviously we've gone back and reopened the scheme. We've already had over 18,000 people resubscribe again, so it shows that people are using the scheme and they've resubscribed quite quickly. And during lockdown, when it went to monthly, I think it made people appreciate how good the actual garden waste scheme is for people to use, and probably made some people that haven't got the bin at the moment because they're at home gardening more actually think that's worth the money to invest to have the garden waste bin. So I think it's more, the more we can do about education and changing people's behaviours, that's where we're going to really drive up our recycling rates moving forwards.
Okay, just moving on to question 2. I think this is a really good report generally in terms of giving an account of what's happened, you know, to various services during COVID. But quite a lot of people around the country are talking about recovery from COVID, and that, although it's touched on in the various points in the report, you know, people are talking about, you know, the way that people are now, a lot more people are going out cycling. We've got some stuff about cycling in there, but a lot of people are going out and enjoying and appreciating woodland and green space. Now, I appreciate in some areas of Peterborough, you know, there's already a fair amount of green space, but other areas are not quite so fortunate. So that's one sort of area I think that the council needs to give some thought to, and the other area is transport, because there is some focus on cycling, but you know, there's been a massive decline in use of public transport, and although car usage dropped quite significantly, it's now increasing quite dramatically. So I think my question is, you know, is the committee at some point going to have a report that will have some longer term thinking in about the recovery of from COVID, about, you know, about maximising these issues of access to green space, but also looking about how we get people back again onto using sustainable transport.
Okay, thank you very much. Which one's going to take? Who's going to take that? Charlotte, is that you as your transport?
Yeah, I'm happy to take the question on transport. Yeah, in terms of continuing to encourage people to get out and walk and cycle as much as possible, and indeed increasing patronage on buses, that is something that we're continuing to look at how we develop that moving forward. I was in discussion with a colleague at the Combined Authority earlier today to discuss bus patronage and how numbers are affected recently, and they were telling me just earlier today how some numbers had started to see an increase, but obviously now have taken a downward turn again due to the impacts of the most recent changes to around lockdown and social distancing. The Combined Authority are leading trying to encourage a campaign to encourage people out onto the buses where it is safe to do so, and of course we're still putting measures in place to make sure there's enough bus services for school children to enable them to get to school safely as well. I agree, over time it would be useful to have a more intense campaign, and that is something we're in discussion with, as I say, with our colleagues at the County Council and also the Combined Authority at the moment. And of course, if members of this group would wish to see a further report on that, then obviously if that's agreed to be added into the work programme, we'd be more than happy to prepare something on that basis.
Okay, Councillor Sandiford, if you'd like to think about some wording, maybe you'll be putting in a recommendation, just a hint there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wiggin then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Wanted to ask a bit more about cycling and the pop-up cycle lanes. There's been some quite high profile media coverage of car users not respecting the cycle lanes, hitting into the bollards. There's also incidents where some of the bollards have gone missing. This may be related to cars, it may be other reasons. And also there's been issues with the new road cycle lane because of the work going on in the Halo nightclub building. meaning that cars need to access that so the cycle lane isn't in place. Do we know how many incidents there have been of cars interfering with the pop-up cycle lanes, such as happened on Crescent Bridge in particular? And are there any ongoing plans to not just encourage people to use the cycle lanes with cycles, but to educate car users that cyclists aren't all crazy people risking their lives, but they are friendly road users and they need to be respected?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So in relation to the pop-up cycle and walking facilities that have gone up, I can reassure members that they are being checked daily by our partner Skanska to make sure if anything has been moved or put in the wrong place or signs changed, they are corrected very quickly. I don't have to hand a number to say how many times they've had to actually make repairs. I can have a look at getting that data together, obviously depending on how specific elements of that are recorded. I can feed that back to the group. In terms of specific instances, we are aware of issues. For example, the one incident that was featured in the media about Crescent Bridge, and some other people finding it difficult to follow some of the one-way road layout rules. But all the measures are all the schemes are reviewed, as I say, very regularly. And we're also have had a number of occasions where we've revised the design of the scheme, so that actually when we're out on site and we can see how people are using those, we can respond and make sure they're working as we intended. Now, in terms of the next element of that question about educating people to be more aware of cyclists, one of the things that links to that is the work we're doing as well as part of these measures, which is the School Streets initiative, whereby members will have seen in the report that we've offered the opportunity for all schools across the city to take part in the School Streets programme, which effectively means closing the road outside of the school between during drop-off and pick-up times. Now, obviously, every school isn't suitable for that, with some schools being on very busy main roads. With bus routes, etc., running through. But for every school that comes forward, we do undertake a risk assessment of the site to see what is feasible. And the reason I draw your attention to this at this particular point is because this is essential in raising awareness of different modes of commuting, basically. And the more people we have walking and cycling, the more normal that feels to everyone, and the more that changes people's behaviour, both from a motorist perspective, but also from a pedestrian and cyclist perspective as well. We will look to see if there's any further communication we can do as part of that wider campaign to encourage people to use these modes of transport that we've discussed earlier. And I'll certainly add that to my notes to discuss with my colleagues and the combined authority about that comms plan to see how we can tie that point in as well.
Thank you, Charlotte. Okay, we're going to go to Co-opted Parish Councillor Keith Leavesley, please.
Thank you, Chair. In one of the presentations in a scrutiny meeting, either late last year, early this year, officers came in, maybe Charlotte, and talked about a review of parking policy and also trying to reduce the numbers of people coming in cars. So in the papers before us, there's a reference to no single occupancy of cars coming in, and Royal Haskellin Consultants in Peterborough have been given a contract to review this. At the time, I commented that I hope it's not going to be one size fits all, because from a rural perspective, if you take my case, for example, I live on my own in a village of 200 with no bus service. So my prospects of getting someone to join me to go into town are pretty limited. I just wondered if Charlotte's familiar with the contract that's been issued, whether that sort of nuanced approach has been taken into account.
Yep, good question. Charlotte, is that you?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so this is an item referred to in the next report for the update on the air quality actions. But just to briefly update, I have to say I'm not absolutely familiar with the detail of that specification for that work that's been undertaken. But I am scribbling down a note right now to make sure and go away and speak to the relevant colleagues and make sure they factor in that into the consideration. Obviously, it's a complex thing to look at, but they will. I'll ask them to do so.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, could I just come in on that? I think Charlotte's will be helpful to find out a bit more information, but just to reassure the councillor that the analysis will take into account demand and supply of parking spaces across the city. This is the Haskellin work, and part of that analysis, you know, it's been a complex 6 months, so it's going to be looking at the flow of traffic and the demand prior to lockdown to get a benchmark for the type of demand levels that the city was experiencing. But it's also going to factor in, you know, the options around other modes of travel, and also where do we want the car parks to be around the city, to both enable people to drive in if they wish to, but also to reduce the amount of cars, the number of cars that are actually within the city centre itself. So the location of car parks becomes an important part of the consideration. We haven't got the final report yet. That's still on its way through, so we should be receiving it, I think, in the next couple of weeks, and we'll obviously look at that very carefully.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, Councillor John Fox, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to remind members that we have got a cross-party working group looking at cycling and walking. So if you've got any questions, concerns, ideas, it'd be a good idea to pass them on to your rep, because that way he can voice your opinions as he, you know, you've got your own personal reps. So it'd be a very good idea.
Thank you, Councillor Fox, for that. Okay, Councillor Sanford, I've got you again.
Yeah, just briefly wanted to come back on the answer that Charlotte gave to Councillor Chris Wiggins' question about cycling. One of the cycle lanes I use quite a bit is the one in Priestgate, and I'm surprised when Charlotte said that they're inspected on a regular basis, because I've noticed over a period of about a fortnight that the number of bollards that have been taken out seems to have increased. And there's also a problem that the cycle lane comes to an end before Priestgate joins onto Bridge Street, and in the space at the end of the cycle lane, that there's a big problem with cars parking. And what that means is, when a cyclist is coming along the cycle lane, they've then got to swerve outwards. So if those 2 points could be looked at, please.
You're okay with that, Charlotte, to have a check that?
Yeah, that's fine. So in terms of the inspections, they are being carried out regularly, but there has been some instances where posts have been damaged and we've had to seek replacements, and getting them into stock has taken a little bit longer than we would have hoped. But obviously, as I'm sure members can understand, lots of cities all over the country are delivering these schemes at the moment, and therefore materials can be in short supply. In terms of parking, I need to refresh my mind, particularly on that element that you're looking at, but I know we did have issues around some construction happening on the road, whereby there was some scaffolding and storage on Priestgate itself that was already permitted use of the land there. We've had to wait till that has been completed before we can complete the extension of the cycle lane along that area. So that I'll make sure that's happened, and then if not, obviously act accordingly.
Thank you very much. Got quite a few hands up. If you're not asking a question, would you mind just pressing your hand off for me? Councillor Casey, I've got, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was earlier on, Steve has mentioned that there were preparations almost for sort of future potential local lockdowns and things. And I was just really seeking assurance that we have a list of lessons learnt from the first wave, but we also have a list of how we could do things better, and preparations are in place to do things better next time, and having had the experience of the first wave, with a view to sort of various predictions as well.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I can give that assurance, Councillor Casey. It's there's been a lot of unprecedented actions took place in the first lockdown that we weren't necessarily prepared for, that we have learnt from, and we don't want to be in the same position again, but we may be, and it's right that we're prepared for that. And I know the conversations we have as officers are frequently about making sure we are prepared for any second wave and any lockdowns that need to be put in place. But we have learned a lot from the first lockdown, and we will apply that in the second if there is one.
Thank you very much, Steve. Okay, any more? No. Okay, if there are no further questions, I would like to note the recommendation in the report, which is for the committee to note and comment on the report. I think we've done this well. Thank you very much. If you don't agree with that, please raise your virtual hand now. Councillor Sanford.
Yes, so I'm not raising my hand because I don't think the committee's done a good job. I think that there's been lots of really good questions. You did invite me at the end to maybe put a recommendation forward, which I think it would be helpful if members of the committee think it's a good idea, to maybe have a report at some time in the future on, you know, how the council is going to try and adapt to the changes in transport usage and you know, try to persuade people sort of out of cars and onto public transport, because I think that could be a really hard job, because you know, there's been quite a lot of negative messaging about, you know, how you should avoid public transport. Now the government's saying that you can go onto it, but I think it's quite a complex issue, and I think a report on it could be helpful.
Steve and Charlotte, would you be happy to produce that, or do you want any more detail what Councillor Sanford is after?
Chair, if I can, I think it's a really helpful suggestion to have a report back to committee if members would like that, and I think of course it can pick up on Councillor Sanford's suggestions, but I wonder whether the committee would like a broader representation of what we've learned over whatever the period is. And I think that's probably something I would ask members to give us a little bit of time to think about when the right time would be for a report to come back. The tranche 2 active travel measures, assuming we get the funding confirmed, will need to be delivered by the end of the financial year. So I wonder whether that 6 months might be an appropriate time for a report to come back to committee to pick up Councillor Sanford's points, but perhaps a wider update as well.
I think 6 months is a reasonable time. Councillor Sanford, are you happy with that?
Yeah, in fact, I think Steve's absolutely right. You know, transport's just one thing, but there's a whole series of implications about the behaviour changes. It could be happening, lots more people working from home, you know, and so yeah, I think a broad report would be helpful.
Thank you very much. Okay, committee, then I have a recommendation. I need a seconder for that. Now, Councillor, are you seconding, or are you at a different point?
Yes, I am seconding, and just ask that this report includes the work which is being done on various working groups, including the climate change working group, which is having a whole targeted session, afternoon session, looking at some transport in relation to climate change, as well as COVID-19. So yeah, I was happy to second.
Chairman, do you mind if I just jump in quickly, please? Just say, because this is simply a request for a particular report to come to the committee in the future, I wouldn't say this necessarily needs to be a recommendation. It can simply be added to the work programme, discussed at group reps. A recommendation would normally be to cabinet or to a cabinet member to actually change something, but I can just add it to the work programme.
Yes, please.
Yes, is everybody happy with that? Could you raise your hand if you're not? That'd be the easiest way with this. No objections to that. So yes, David, please, if you could add that. That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've come to the end of that. Officers, thank you very much for your time, and if you are no longer needed, you can leave the meeting when you're ready. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on now to item 8. Item 8 is the review, task and finish group to inform the development of an air quality ambition statement action plan. Pages 47 to 52 in your agenda. I would like to welcome the following officers who are in attendance to assist with the presentation of this report. Charlotte Palmer, Group Manager, Transport and Environment, and Dorothy Poulter, Senior Environment and Pollution Officer. When you're ready, officers, would you like to present your report?
Yes, thank you. So I'll just run through a brief summary of the report. So the Air Quality Task and Finish Group was established back in September 2018. And the recommendations of the group were endorsed by this committee back on the 8th of January this year and subsequently approved at Cabinet. The report itself lists each of the recommendations that were made and summarises the progress made to date against each of them. But it should be noted, as members will appreciate, that COVID-19 has impacted the work, both in terms of reducing the availability of officer capacity, but also work taking priority over some of these tasks. For example, the local bus companies have understandably focused their resources on their local COVID-19 response. However, having said that, and as we've already discussed on the previous item, COVID has also presented some opportunities, notably the emergency active travel schemes that we discussed. And I was going to hope to draw your attention here to one of the initiatives in particular, the School Streets Initiative, but I know we've already discussed that. The reason for mentioning it really is just to encourage members, with schools in your wards that aren't already participating in School Streets, to come to encourage the schools to take part and submit an expression of interest to us because of the multiple benefits that it has, not just in terms of air quality, but in terms of increased activity amongst young people and helping to reduce congestion outside of the school gates. Since writing the report, we've also had an opportunity to discuss some of the specific aspects of the recommendations with the combined authority, and I can confirm that we're now in the process of developing some of these actions further and are due to meet them again in about a month's time. So I don't propose to talk through each of the recommendations now in detail, but of course if you've got any questions, obviously Dorothy and I are both here and happy to take any questions that may arise.
Okay, thank you very much, Charlotte. Hands up then. So we've got Councillor Aitken, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Charlotte. As seems to be transport the topic tonight. Report was very comprehensive, so thank you for that. I note that a bus reform task force has been set up. And I just wanted to know whether there is a deadline for when that task force will sort of come to an end, what you're hoping to achieve in there, or should I say what the combined authority are hoping to achieve, so that we have some timescales. What I also would like, if possible, is to get visibility of any documentation that comes out of that out of your regular meetings. Is that possible?
Okay, is that Charlotte can set up?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was struggling with the mute button for a second. Yeah, so that work is underway, and as you say, it's work that the combined authority are undertaking, but with involvement from officers at both Cambridgeshire and Peterborough authorities. The combined authority are currently at the stage of producing the outline business case, which effectively looks at each of the different options for the delivery of bus services moving forward, ranging from effectively keeping things as they are now, effectively in terms of how the services are delivered, through to the option of franchising the local networks or part of the local networks. They're planning to have that work done later this year, and will be going to consultation to look at the different options. So I can take an action to ensure that's fed back. The way this works at the moment is the Bus Task Reform Group has member representation, and I believe that's Councillor Allen currently represents Peterborough City Council on that group. But again, of course, we can ensure that papers are shared or members directed to papers that are produced by the combined authority.
Okay, thank you. That's Aitken, okay.
Yes, I'm happy for, well, what I can do is obviously speak to Councillor Allen with regards to what's happening on the reform group, but I think a number of us have got issues with regards to the bus service around Peterborough. We definitely feel that it needs to be improved, so I think it would be good for all of us to keep an eye on exactly what decisions are being made by the combined authority on behalf of Peterborough. But thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just take my hand down. Okay, first of all, I just want to ask, I've got some questions on a couple of the recommendations, and also I've got a question on something which I don't think has been included on this action plan, which I just want to query about. First of all, recommendation 5, it's something which I think I asked at a group reps meeting to be included on a work programme. So I mean, we may be looking at it at another meeting, but it's just if there is any update on the mass rapid transport plan, and the meeting by the combined authority being held late in September, if there's any updates which could be given, or if it's too early, and what plans or what ideas they got which could help in Peterborough. Recommendation 7, an update on the tree and green planting barriers to reduce emissions, and especially concerns around some of the green plant. It sometimes goes the other way around, where some of the barriers and the trees and planting areas are being taken away. So just an update on what can be done and proposals for that. And I have a question about something which I thought would be included on the ambition statement action plan, but if somebody can let me know the reasons why, and perhaps give me an update. We were talking about refuse collection earlier on, and I think one of the issues we have is the fleets, the lorries, are becoming, out of date and are having problems. But we have a keenness to update our fleet with emission-friendly vehicles. So I would have thought that might have been included, our own city council vehicles, including the refuse lorries around them being emission friendly rather than just diesel, etc. So can we have, just somebody can explain if that can be included in the ambition statement action plan, or if it can't, why it can't? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. If I take those in order, firstly, in relation to the mass rapid transit study that's been undertaken, we have had a brief discussion with the combined authority about this, and we're due to put together a paper effectively to share amongst officers to discuss the opportunities that we think can be brought forward in the short, medium and longer term in relation to that study. So as you touched on, really, it is a little bit too early for me to go into too much detail about that, but other than just to assure you that we are progressing that and looking forward to bringing options forward in due course. The second point around green infrastructure, what we've done here is we're now making sure that that's an item that's included as standard on the project board that happens across all of the highway schemes. So we schedule a monthly meeting where we go through each of the different schemes that the council is delivering, both in terms of some of the more major highway schemes and some of the smaller work that's undertaken. And we're looking at opportunities for where we can maximise the use of green infrastructure for schemes. Now, that is very much a balancing act, and as members that were involved in the cross-party working group on air quality will be aware, in terms of making sure people feel like they're safe in an open, visible environment for walking and cycling, as alongside the benefits of being sheltered by any green infrastructure. It's an area where I feel we can continue to undertake more work. And one of the things I was researching over the weekend actually was just in terms of what sort of training we might be able to offer to officers to make them more aware of the benefits of green infrastructure and thinking a little bit more outside of the box in terms of design. So again, that's something we'll be able to update on in due course. We do have some good examples of existing green infrastructure across the city, but a lot of those were put in at the point in time that an area was developed. So, for example, through Bretton Way, there's a segregated cycle lane and a nice dense hedgerow, which has its pros and cons again from the sort of fear of crime perspective. But still, there were some good examples there, and we're looking at how we can build them in. But it's usually more challenging when you have existing infrastructure that you have to work around. And the final point there was around the refuse vehicles and the fleet vehicles. And I agree with your point in that this is something that the air quality group could have looked at, but equally it was necessary to draw the line somewhere. And I think one of the ways that this will be picked up is within the climate change working group, whereby we're looking at transport emissions, as you mentioned earlier. And I think this is one of the things that the council can look to do. Now, there's already a fleet review underway with Harrigan, where they're looking at different options for the wide range of different vehicles they utilise on the contract. And they're targeting, they're basically looking at the moment of developing a fleet renewal programme that ties in with the council's declaration of a climate emergency to look at net zero emissions by 2030. Now, I haven't seen the full study yet, but I am very much aware from the feedback that officers have given us is that some vehicles are evidently much easier to switch to an ultra low emission vehicle now than others. So, for example, there are general car vehicles are obviously more readily available now than refuse fleet vehicles, which whilst they are available, they're still at the earlier stage of availability at the moment and have not been as fully tested, to my knowledge, as others. So that is a transitional plan that we'll need to build in and factor into that wider work.
Okay, next.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burbidge.
Hi, thank you, Chair, and thank you, officers, for a brilliant report there. Mine relates to section 4.2, where you quote the local transport plan and the bus reform project, which commenced in 2019. Bearing in mind that we are currently coming to the end of a public consultation for the urgent treatment centre services to be moved from the City Care Centre to PCH, just off the A47 in Bretton Gate. Is it not now time to reconsider an arterial bus route that goes around our parkways of the city, so we can link up all of the out of town shopping areas and business areas without the need to have to go into town, change a bus and come back out again? And particularly now you're serving it looks like there's a possibility you may be serving the PCH site with a lot more traffic. The parking at PCH is already at a premium, overspilling into various streets in both Bretton and Westwood, to the point now where there's actually altercations going on in the streets regarding the parking there. So I just think it would be a good time now to have a look at an arterial bus route.
Thank you, Councillor Burbidge. What I can confirm is that we are in discussion with the Combined Authority about an orbital bus route at the moment, but I'm not entirely sure that it's going to pick up the urgent care centre that you refer to, so I will look into that. I'm not fully aware of that work at the moment, so I would need to look into it in more detail. The route that's being considered at the moment, which is one that would be funded through the Combined Authority, and it's only a potential route at the moment, there's no guarantee that this will come forward, but what they're looking at is a route that connects up Hampton with Alton Northgate, and then along the Oundle Road and past Neame Park effectively onto the Parkway and up to the hospital there, and serving as perhaps a small proportion of Bretton as well. And they're looking at that at the moment in terms of scheduling to see how viable that would be, and also what the level of patronage would likely be on the route as well, of course, with the aim of making that into a commercially viable route over time. So that is definitely something they are exploring. In addition to that, we are in ongoing discussions with Stagecoach, because Stagecoach are looking at whether they need to review some of the routes they operate within Peterborough as well. So we're talking to them about various opportunities, for example, where new development has arisen in the city or new developments may come forward in the near future, to look at wider routes, and orbital routes is something that's fed back to them, and it was certainly fed back to them at the time by members of the cross-party working group, who, from my memory and my recollection of those meetings, made it very clear that that's something they wish Stagecoach to consider. But I think that's just one point to note really, is that about 90% of the routes in Peterborough are commercially operated, and the commercial operators therefore have the freedom to choose and determine their own routes. But that is one of the reasons the Combined Authority are looking at the opportunities to deliver buses in a different way. Because if, for example, they opted for the franchising route, that would give the Combined Authority the role of determining what routes should happen and where they should start and finish. So that's very much a part of this ongoing work that's coming forward at the moment.
Excellent. Councillor Judy Fox, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's regarding the bus reform group, and it's just really following on from Councillor Aiken and what she has commented about. Could councillors be kept updated, please, especially if certain services are going to be affected? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure that's a yes. Is that a yes, Charlotte?
That is a yes. Yes.
Yes, double checking. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. My question was just about on section 4.5, looking at the number of taxis that have been registered through the authority. I was interested to know what the definition of a low emission vehicle is, because there's quite a low number of Euro 6 vehicles that have been registered. And I'd imagine Euro 6 would be interpreted as the lowest possible emission vehicle. So what is the definition of a low emission vehicle as it stands at the moment for the city?
Okay, the definition isn't one that's sort of selected on a local level. It's a national, it may even be an international standard that determines what sort of category the vehicles fall into. And I don't have the actual definition in front of me, but I can look that up and circulate that for you. But just as the report indicates, to give you an idea, the Prius, which was one of the electric cars we kind of all remember coming to the market, I think, in what seems like the not too distant past. And that is now only a low emission vehicle rather than an ultra low emission vehicle. So that's, I don't know if that helps to put you into context at all as the type of vehicle that we're talking about. But yeah, as the report states, the number of vehicles coming through to the market for licensing does make this a little challenging. And so that's why one of the recommendations it looks at is having a gradual phased out approach to reducing the number of years whereby we license a vehicle, so that by a certain point in time, we'll be at a position to have all of our vehicles as ultra low emission.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sandford.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the reasons I wanted to come to the committee this evening is I was the chair of the cross-party working group that actually put this report forward, and Councillor Aitken was on it as well, and I believe Councillor Jamil was the third person. When we presented the report to the cabinet, one of the points that we made was that you could basically take probably 8 out of the 9 recommendations in this report, and they would, if you implemented them, they would do good things for air quality, but they also make a big impact on climate change as well. So one of the things that the cabinet agreed was that the cross-party climate change working group would be charged with taking these recommendations forward, and I'm actually also part of that group. So one of the reasons for being here this evening is to actually hear what members of the committee have to say. But I'd just like to make a couple of additional comments, really. I thought Councillor Burbidge made a really good point about orbital bus routes, because as Charlotte was saying, when we were talking to Stagecoach as part of the preparation of this report, that was one of the points that we put to them. But I have to say, I've been at meetings where that point's been put to Stagecoach on a number of occasions, and they're always quite resistant. So I do think one of the key things in the first recommendation is that the combined authority now has the power. The Mayor of Cambridgeshire has the power to introduce bus franchising. There are pros and cons of that, but I think it's certainly something that should actively be considered, because that would then give the Mayor of Cambridgeshire control over bus routes across Cambridgeshire. So the other point I wanted to make was in relation to recommendation 7. Again, Charlotte referred to that, and I've had a conversation with Charlotte on this. My understanding is this was always intended to apply to both existing green infrastructure and new green infrastructure that is being put in, because I think Councillor Ellis made an interesting point, which was that that if you have instances where you have existing hedgerows and they're either hacked down to the ground or removed completely, then you can lose a lot of the sort of air quality benefit. I take absolutely the point that Charlotte made, that you've got to have a balance between sort of public safety and also the sort of air quality benefits. But it's more difficult when you're talking about existing green infrastructure. But I do think that the actual air quality benefit should be one of the factors that is taken into account. So those are just a few comments, really.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Good. Anybody else? Got any questions? No. Can I just say, from my own point of view and from others, thanks for the report, all those that and all the effort you put into this. It's an excellent report, and it's good to see things are moving on. From a personal point of view, 410, I've always been concerned with a ward that's right next to these brickworks that we don't just accept to just not bother monitoring anymore. So thank you very much for basically asking them to prove it before we remove it. So thank you for that. Any other questions at all? No. Okay. Then I'd like to note the recommendation in the report, which is for the committee to review and comment on the report. Are the committee satisfied that we have done this? Please indicate your hand if you, with your right hand, or your blue hand if you object. No, no objections. No, I can't see any objections at all, so I recommend this recommendation is agreed. Thank you to the officers that have been in attendance for presenting the report. Thank you very much for everybody, and those who made the report. If you finished, you can of course leave the meeting. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 9. Agenda item 9 is managing suspension of affixing council seal to legal documentation. Pages 53 to 56 of your agenda. I would like to welcome Fiona Macmillan, Director of Law and Governance, who will present this report. Fiona?
Thank you, Chairman. It's just really for the committee to note a decision that I asked the Chief Executive to take under the urgency procedures in the Constitution to limit the number of documents that are required to affix the council seal to. This applies to contracts over £100,000, which our contract rules require to be sealed. There's still a number of other documents that they're still required to be executed as a deed, and those are set out in a table in the report. So any questions, please?
Okay. Any questions of the committee at all? No, I don't see any questions at all. Therefore, I would like to note the recommendation in the report, which is for the committee to note the decision taken by the Chief Executive under Part 4, Section 4.61 of the Constitution as set out in this report. Are the committee satisfied we have done this? Please indicate by raising your virtual hand if you object. I see no hands being raised, therefore recommendation is agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, officers. And again, if you've finished on the meeting, you may of course leave. Thank you very much for your time. Agenda item 10 then. This is the review of the 2019-20 and work programme for 2021, pages 57 to 88. Over to you, David, please, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a standing item on the agenda of every scrutiny committee at the start of each municipal year. It gives members the opportunity to review the programme of work that the committee undertook in the last year and to decide if any of those items require further monitoring. Members are also asked to approve the draft work programme for the next municipal year, which will be continuously revised at group reps meetings. Members are also asked to review recommendations made at previous meetings. That report has been updated with some of the joint COVID scrutiny meetings as well. So members are invited to make any comments on those and request further monitoring if that's required. And members are also asked to note the terms of reference for this committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions then? I've got Councillor Ellis, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think you know what I'm going to ask. Yeah, the 24th of February meeting, the recommendations made to the joint scrutiny at that date, there was 3 recommendations made, but there wasn't in the minutes. It doesn't have the response from the cabinet. Now, I realise things have moved on a lot because of COVID, and some of these may be a lot different now. But I just want, just a verbal update, if possible, if things have changed, or if there's a response, or if a response can be given in writing, if it can't be done, verbally tonight. First of all, on page 13, recommends that the cabinet takes the reduction in CO2 emissions in the city more seriously, especially by ensuring properties acquired by the council are energy efficient and CO2 neutral, including temporary accommodation for homeless people. If there's a cabinet response on that. The second one is regarding parking charges. This is the one which may have changed quite a bit due to COVID. It's on page 14 of the new papers. And finally, the replacement of refuse collection vehicles. Well, we've already discussed that, so leave that. We've already discussed that and other items in the agenda. So just the first two recommendations and update, please.
Chairman, may I just jump in there?
Yes, of course.
So the recommendations that Councillor Ellis is referring to were considered by Cabinet at the meeting on the 25th of February, and the response that Cabinet made are included within Appendix 2 to the report. So it might be helpful if Councillor Ellis could just clarify whether he's seeking additional responses and additional updates beyond that already given by Cabinet, please, in the report.
Okay, Councillor Ellis.
I'll flick to appendix then, if the responses are there. Just all the other responses were together. It just seemed strange that there wasn't responses there. Okay, then thanks for that clarification.
Thank you very much. Councillor Judy Fox, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, mine was, unfortunately, I couldn't get to the last or do the Zoom or meeting, the last group reps. I did ask a long while ago, I don't know whether it's on, I've looked for it, can't see it, whether the farming can be kept on the work programme somehow. That's all it was really, please. Because obviously we had the dispute along quite a while ago now, and it was going to be updated and keep coming back so many months, and I just really wondered whether that was on at all. Thank you.
I believe that's a statutory one we do anyway, isn't it? So is Steve still there? Is he gone?
Oh, good. That's all right then. That's fine. Thank you.
Nobody else coming on. So, David, can we make a note to make sure that is in there somewhere in our work programme?
Absolutely, Chairman. It's currently listed as a pending item at the bottom of the work programme. But what I can do is find an officer who's willing to attend group reps and discuss the scheduling in of that item so that we can get that actioned.
Yeah, we haven't heard from that for quite a while, so yeah. Okay, Judy Fox, yes, Councillor Fox, happy with that? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, would it be of benefit to look at the parking review that's coming through next month and to consider that for the plan, which was on section, forgive me, 4.3 recommendation 2.
That's going back on the, sorry David, go on. Was that David who came in then?
Oh, so that was me. It was on the air quality report, sorry.
Right, we've gone way above that, haven't we? So, hang on. 4.2.
Yes, a 4.3 recommendation 2.
What is it you wanted to know exactly?
Well, I just wondered if we wanted to look at that report when it comes through in October. I didn't know if that was worth considering in the plan or.
I think that might be, I don't know, just committee, would that be okay to have that round as a basically a report to all members rather than having it as an item? We can call it in, we can put it on the agenda if we really want to. If we feel there's, you know, we want to.
Steve Cox here, Chair. I'm very happy to do that if Councillor Howard is happy with that once we've received the report and digested it, to put a note round to members to summarise what it says.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Right, that, John. And then obviously, if we want to scrutinise it more, we can ask it to go or to get it on the agenda. But okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you for that. Right. Okay. Is that the only one? I've got nobody else. Co-opted parish councillor Keith Leasley, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if we were intending to have a look at the Towns Fund submission, because it's not on the programme as I can see it. I don't want to see whether Steve feels it could come to us.
Chair, I think through you, an update certainly on the Towns Fund we could provide to the committee. We're expecting the response sometime in October, I think. We're not quite sure, but maybe at an appropriate meeting thereafter to bring an update to the Scrutiny Committee about our delivery plans, should we be successful in that submission.
Yeah, sounds great. Committee all right with that? Nobody? Parish Councillor Keith Leasley, you all right with that?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Steve, for that. Okay, I've got nothing else, no other hands going up now. So, okay, if there's no further questions, I'd like to note the recommendation report, which is for the, oh, somebody's hand just went up there and went down again.
It was mine, Chair. Sorry, just to say, shall we add the COVID update item for the March meeting following our discussion earlier?
Yes, I think so. I think that would be good. That would go in there nicely. Yeah. Thank you very much. Did you get a note of that, David? Okay.
I did indeed. Yes. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay. If there are no further questions, I would like to note the recommendation in the report, which is for the committee to consider the items presented to the Growth, Environment and Resources Committee during 2019-20 and make recommendations. As necessary, determines its priorities and approves the draft work programme 2020-21 as attached in Appendix 1, notes the recommendations, monitoring report attached at Appendix 2 and considers if further monitoring of the recommendations made during 2019-2020 municipal year is required, notes the terms of reference for this particular committee as set out in Part 3, Section 4, Overview and Scrutiny Functions, and in particular paragraph 2.1, Item 4, Growth, Environment and Resources Scrutiny Committee, and paragraph 3.8, Flood Risk Management as attached in Appendix 3. Take a breath. Are the committee satisfied we have done this? If you're not satisfied, please raise your hand. No? Okay. I'll take that as you are satisfied. Thank you very much. Thank you, David. Okay, we're now going to move on to item 11, which is the forward plan of executive decisions, pages 89 to 126. There's a more recent version of this, which I'm sure you would have got today from Pauline, that was sent round, which you can have a look at. Are there any particular things on there you want to look at all? Anybody?
Chair?
Yes. Councillor, I've got you now, yeah.
Hey, I won't be too long because Arsenal are playing, but this is more important at the moment. Okay, just 3 items on there, the most up to date, which was sent out by Paulina. First of all, on page 10, vehicle removal for parking contraventions. It talks about a consultation. It's item 5 on page 10. Just a question, is this across the whole of the city? It's not just the city centre, and also who will be consulted? I presume ward councillors, will parish councils and also residents associations, as well as a general consultation online. Just a little bit of information about that, first of all. Do you want me to refer to the other 2 items on the forward plan?
We would have to get Councillor Walsh to come back with that, wouldn't we, David, to answer that particular question?
You can do it in writing if need be.
We would have to, because she's not with us. So
to the whole committee. Committee, yeah, that'd be fine. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Have you got that, David?
I have, yes. I'll request a briefing note on the committee's behalf.
The next one.
Page 30. It's moving your thumb down electronically. Well, not your thumb electronically, but down to page 30. Purchase of new fleet and plants for environment-based services. What are these services? What are these plants and new fleet? What is it that's been purchased? And it's good news, but I just want to know what it is.
Okay. Yeah, fine. That's Councillor Celesti.
So again, in writing, if
a briefing note for that.
Yeah, brilliant. And page 35. I mean, there might be a verbal update could be given on this. It's a non-key decision. For approval for proposals to develop a new swimming pool and leisure facility. Just if it's possible to have a verbal update, if there is much of an update.
Yeah, that kind of cabinet, isn't it? That one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how can we? Is that going to be a briefer note as well, or can we do it quickly?
I'm guessing as it's going to cabinet, David, it will be when they've sat and looked at it. Yes, in November.
Yes, indeed. I'm happy to request a briefing note in advance of that, though, if members would find that beneficial.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
that'd be brilliant. Thank you.
I don't see any reason why not. I mean, obviously, you'll get a bit of an update before the cabinet, I guess. So.
Brilliant. Thank you for indulging me.
No problem. Okay, Councillor Howard, I've got your hand up.
Oh, sorry, I haven't put mine down. Apologies.
Councillor Judy Fox, then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Mine was actually the same as what Councillor Ellis has just asked about the approval for the council to the swimming pool and leisure facility. It's just I really wanted, you know, so that is exactly the same. But if it's going to happen, that's fine. If we could be updated, thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Councillor Judy Fox. Councillor Skipstead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just number 9, key decision 9, about approval of funding for the provision of accommodation to reduce homelessness.
Let's get the page first. Sorry. It's,
13.
well,
I got it at 102 because I was on the main big
page
document.
13 for everybody else. It's just to help. For
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. I just wondered if is that referring to the homeless that people that are currently housed at the Queensgate Hotel, or it was just to get an update on what that actually meant. Is it for those particular people who've been housed during the crisis, or is it a more general housing scheme?
Right. Well, we'll have to ask the question. It's not there, is it, the answer that you're particularly asking?
I will contact Pete Carpenter about that, Chair, and circulate that to the committee.
Does it need to be circulated? Everybody wants to see that, or is that just for Councillor Skipstead?
I was just wondering. I mean, I was wondering, are the other people currently at the hotel? Are they good? What is going to happen to them? Really, that's
a direct question yourself, really, isn't it? So, could you get the briefing to you? Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah. Okay. All right with that, David.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, and Councillor Wiggin now, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, page 33, decision 37, the sale of the freehold of the London Road Stadium and Alia Business Centre. The decision was made on this previously. I called it in because I wasn't happy with some aspects of it, and then the decision seems to have been postponed. Be useful to have an update as to what's going on. Okay. I know there's a lot of factors at play, including football clubs' resilience to COVID and the council's resilience to COVID. But it'd be useful to know where we stand on that, because this is a big item that affects that local area, the city economy, the future of the embankment plans and the football stadium. There's a lot going on there, and it's crucial we get this right.
No, that's fair. So you want to brief effectively on where we are with that. Yes.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I think we all should get that one as well. So that's a good one. Thank you. Okay, David, with that one.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you, Chair.
Good. Anybody else? Councillor Skipstead, are you back on, or have I got you twice? Sorry.
Sorry, you got me twice. I'll just take my hand down.
Okay. Thank you. Right, we've got nothing else coming through now. So thank you very much for all those suggestions. We've made a note of those. Right. Okay, we're on to item 12, which is the note basically of the next meetings. Just so you know, you've got the 10th November is the Growth, Environment and Resources Scrutiny Committee. That's us. And on the 11th November, then we have the next joint scrutiny of the budget. So please, I'm sure you'll be getting all the diary invites, but be aware of those. Okay. Right, we're going to move on then to item 13. Item 13 relates to Opportunity Peterborough. I would like to welcome Tom Hennessy, CEO Opportunity Peterborough, who will present this report. Can I remind you that if you wish to discuss Appendix B, the Opportunity Peterborough business plan, then this committee will have to move into an exempt session at that point, and live streaming of the meeting will stop. Once Tom has finished introducing his report, I'll ask you for questions. So Tom, when you're ready, please present your report.
Thank you, Chair. So I've been asked to come and present to the committee this evening as part of an annual update looking at the activities and achievements of Opportunity Peterborough over the previous financial year, as well as to share with you our business plan for the year ahead and look at the opportunities and challenges that we're facing, and to provide you on this occasion with information that may be of interest to you when considering future budget implications on funding for Opportunity Peterborough. We obviously have very much enjoyed the support of the City Council since our inception and being wholly owned by the City Council. I think we provide great value for money to the council and to the city, and just want to emphasise the importance of economic development, support for businesses and job retention, particularly in the current circumstances, given the effect of the pandemic on the local economy and on people's jobs, livelihoods, health and well-being. So just as a bit of a recap on what we have been doing. So we provide quite a holistic approach to economic development in the city. We work hard to promote the city as a fantastic business location and encourage more businesses here. In 2019-20, we supported 35 inquiries, helping to create 351 jobs within the city area. This equates to a increase in economic output for the city region of over £10 million, which ends up as a return on investment for the council funding of £100 or more for every £1 invested in Opportunity Peterborough. If you take the entirety of the services that we provide, we feel that they would be somewhere in the region of just under £1 million purchased on the market, whereas obviously the investment that the Peterborough City Council puts into Opportunity Peterborough is in the region of 140,000 a year. One of the successes we've had recently is obviously AM Fresh establishing themselves, creating around 140 jobs or so. But just speaking to one of the points that was raised earlier around food waste, what we've done is actually link them up with a local SME, a spin out from the National Institute for Agriculture and Botany in Cambridge called AgriGrub, my apologies, that deal with food waste through innovative insect usage to break that down, but also create a number of byproducts, which speaks to the circular economy work that we've got a very strong reputation for as well. General work supporting business growth. We obviously operate the bondholder network, part of which is running the bondholder dinner at the cathedral every year. Unfortunately, given current circumstances, we've not been able to do that this year, but often described as the highlight of the business calendar. Up until recently, we've also been delivering the European funded LEADER programme supporting rural businesses and community groups. That was a £1 million programme that leveraged in an additional £1.5 million of investment into the rural economy and created 40 jobs supporting 27 projects, everything from new boats for saleability up in Rutland to investing in community halls and to supporting expansion of leisure and tourism businesses and forestry projects. With regards to skills, over the previous year, we facilitated 34,000 engagements between young people and businesses in the area, helping to raise aspirations and increase young people's awareness of career opportunities in the area. That was through 205 events. We also support schools across Peterborough and Huntingdonshire with regards to the Careers Enterprise Company, so enabling schools to develop career strategies by partnering them with a private sector mentor. And more recently, we have developed the Inspire series, which has been sponsored by City Fibre, who many of you will know from the rollout of the ultra-fast gigabit fibre network across the city. This is a STEM-based programme that's getting a lot of coverage nationally now, and City Fibre are looking to roll this out across their city network, and Opportunity Peterborough will be involved in that going forward, looking at key areas of sustainability, careers, utilising the digital gigabit network for smart city purposes and to solve city challenges, as well as creativity as well, driving creative work, arts, culture, but also innovative thinking into the STEM process. And finally, trying to establish Peterborough as the first youth employment friendly city in the country, working closely with an outfit called Youth Employment UK. We're also responsible for the delivery of the Future City demonstrator programme, and over the past year we've been very active with DFID, supporting overseas work, helping to raise the profile of the city as a leader in smart cities and sustainability, particularly in circular economy, and particularly working with Indian smart cities projects, but also getting involved in exhibitions and conferences in Canada and Taiwan, spreading all the good news about the work that we're doing here in Peterborough. And again, coming back to one of the points mentioned earlier around trying to increase active travel, we're actually attracted a business to set up in Peterborough an outfit called Active Orbit, who it's a rewards-based activity tracker. So individuals that sign up for it will accrue points through activity, cycling, walking, etc. And they can be redeemed through local retailers and restaurateurs and other service providers who sign up to the scheme. So on the one hand, promoting activity and active lifestyle, on the other hand, supporting local businesses as well. Recently, we've also been supporting the council in its efforts to combat the COVID-19 pandemic and the impacts on the city. We conducted a survey with over 100 businesses, and that's fed into a lot of the responses of the council, but also working closely with the combined authority. We work with them representing Peterborough on the Economic Recovery subgroup and on the Mayor's Forum, and have been played a major part in the formation and formulation of the local economic recovery strategy that will be coming to Cabinet in November, I believe. Also supporting small businesses through the Small Business Grants Programme, working closely with a number of Peterborough City Council teams on that, and playing a vital role in the reopening of the city centre as well, when retailers and restaurateurs opened up, and we continue to play a role in that, as well as supporting the Combined Authorities Talent Portal programme, which is pairing people who are facing unemployment with those job opportunities, essentially a free recruitment programme to help people out in these trying times. So some of the opportunities that we're facing at the moment, the Combined Authority, well, it's an opportunity and a challenge at the same time. Currently letting a contract for a business growth service, which is a £32 million project and programme over a 3-year period. But it replaces many of the contracts we currently or have recently held with the Combined Authority, namely the Skills Service, which we deliver over Peterborough, East Cambridgeshire, Fenland and Huntingdonshire, and also our inward investment contract that we've had with the Combined Authority, based on the excellent track record we've had in the city. For the past 12 months, we've been running a pilot scheme across that same geography, Peterborough, Fenland, East Cambridgeshire and Huntingdonshire, supporting what we've termed as the greater Peterborough economy, driving inward investment and job creation across that area. So should we be successful, then this will be a fantastic step forward for the organisation. Should we be unsuccessful, then it's fair to say that a large portion of our existing team will be eligible for 2P, and this will obviously put us in quite a challenging position. Whether or not we are successful, obviously Opportunity Peterborough provides a great range of services to Peterborough City Council, as I've outlined in my report, and obviously critical decisions to come with regards to budget for Peterborough City Council. But I think I just wanted it to be noted and shared with the committee, that obviously if we are taking a more commercial approach and are tied more into very specific activity and outcomes through commercial contracts, such as the Business Growth Service, should there be a point in time where the City Council is no longer able to provide the funding that it currently does to Opportunity Peterborough, then obviously this puts us in a difficult position as far as continuation of the delivery of those services. And they're services that we very much feel are of great value to the city's residents and businesses and to the city council itself. So I'd just like that to be noted and taken on board, and that the information that I provide within this report helps to shape and inform any decision making that will take place in the process in the future. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Tom. Excellent. Okay, committee, I've got Councillor Aitken first, please. No? We'll come back to Councillor Howard then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Thank you for an absolutely fantastic report. This might be an exempt question, by the way. Sorry, just to note.
Oh, right. Well, if
Just
you think
before I go any further,
if it's in Appendix B, we have to go to closed session. So is it in B?
yes.
Right. Well, we can't do that one yet. So can we go to see if there's anything else on the first bit, and then we will have to go to exempt at the end. All right. So we don't
Okay.
put two in front. Is that all right?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, no problem.
No, don't be sorry. It's just so you know. Councillor Aitken, are you back with us?
I am. Sorry about that, Chair. First of all, thank you, Tom, for your report. Very informative. You've gone into a lot of detail there. What I would say, since you've taken over as CEO of Opportunity Peterborough, I've certainly noticed a difference in the impact that OP is having on Peterborough. I would really hope that you are successful in securing the new contract, sort of going forward, because I have no doubt that you will be able to achieve exactly what you want to achieve. My question to you would be, in your presentation, you mentioned about Peterborough being an attractive city in the sense of attracting people to Peterborough. We obviously have a university that will be coming here. As chair of Health Scrutiny, I'm also aware that we need to attract medical staff, GPs, dentists, doctors, consultants. Can you give me some background as to what you're actually doing to try and attract students and obviously professionals, medical professionals to Peterborough?
Okay. Well, first of all, Councillor, thank you for your very kind words about the activities of Opportunity Peterborough in recent years. What I would say about your question is that at the moment, Opportunity Peterborough is very much tasked with engaging businesses, with raising the profile of the city to attract businesses to the city to help create jobs. Through the inward investment work that we do, working very closely with Combined Authority, Peterborough City Council, Department for International Trade, etc. My aspiration, and something that I've talked about at length with members and council officers and the wider community, and we seem to have a lot of support for, is Opportunity Peterborough stepping up another gear and taking on responsibility for place marketing for the city. So that's moving away, well, it's building on the inward investment work that we do, but incorporating, taking responsibility for the visitor economy and for business tourism. So exhibitions, conferences, expos, that sort of thing, attracting more of them to the city, but then also talent attraction. And that speaks exactly to what you are talking about there. It's not something that we currently do because much of what we do is business facing, but these are very complementary activities, and there is a lot of value to be gained by aligning those and putting them together under one roof. It's what they do with London and Partners. It's what Marketing Manchester does, Marketing Edinburgh, and it works very effectively in those places because there's a lot of crossover between the messaging of Peterborough being a fantastic place to live and a fantastic place for businesses to invest and a fantastic place for people to visit. Those messages are often aligned, and it's my aspiration that if we're able to expand into that area, then we will certainly be targeting the kind of professionals that you're talking about there, and that it really builds as well on the aspirations of Anglia Ruskin and the University of Peterborough as well. Of course, they do a lot of training with regards to healthcare at the moment, and I know from conversations we're having with them about their future plans that they really want to build on that. And I think that, so I think those things really align, and be very welcome to have conversations with members about how they feel we can best achieve that.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Aitken, yep.
Yep.
Any further questions before I move on to going into closed session as such? Anybody else? No? No. David, we need to move to closed session then on the next section, please, for Councillor Howard's question.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just ask you to, for the benefit of the public, if you could just read the text under agenda item 12 in your briefing note, please.
Okay,
Under the meeting dates.
Got it. Thank you very much. Okay, the meeting will now go into exempt session. Please could any officers who are not involved with item 13, Opportunity Peterborough, please leave the meeting. For members of the public watching via the Council's YouTube channel, as per the decision taken at the beginning of this meeting, the committee will now go into a private session and the live stream of the meeting will finish. Thank you for watching the meeting. Please can Democratic Services Officer please stop live streaming the meeting now.